can an SPV or an RUV take a management fee and a carried interest? So a lot of people in the venture capital industry have heard that, venture capital funds, angel capital funds often have what's called a 2 and 20 structure. And what that refers to, the 2 in the 2 and 20 structure refers to a 2% management fee. And the 2% is basically charged to the assets under management. Let's just say it's the total amount of investment. The fund manager might charge each of the investors 2% of their total capital commitments as a fee for running the fund and having the expenses. And then on the other hand, there's a 20 that refers to usually what has historically been a 20% carried interest or profits interest that the manager takes after they've returned everyone's investment and given them some kind of preferred return, like let's say 8%. It's called a high water mark in some instances, but it's generally a preferred return that kind of functions like an interest rate. So the question often arises: I want to set up an SPV. Can I take 2 and 20 or any other management fee? It could be 1 and 10. It could be 0.5 and 5%. But the question arises: can you take that? And the answer is that it depends. So, once a company starts raising money to deploy into investment opportunities, it needs to analyze whether it has exemptions under the Investment Company Act of 1940. And there are certain kinds of exemptions that apply. And generally speaking, private funds try to fall under what's called the 3C1 exemption or the 3C7 exemption. Those refer to Investment Company Act sections that give you an exemption from registering as an investment company, basically. And then there's an analysis about the Investment Advisors Act. So in general, if someone is essentially investing on behalf of someone else and taking a fee for doing it, whether it's compensation or otherwise, there's generally an Investment Advisor Act analysis that's required. And same thing, there are certain kinds of investment advisors that are historically exempt from registering as an investment advisor. And one of those exemptions is for advisors to qualifying venture capital funds. So there's an analysis that needs to be done there. So, and then in addition to the federal level with the Investment Company Act and the Investment Advisor Act, there's a level of state regulation which needs to be analyzed as well. So the answer is yes, there can be some fee arrangements made. There are some platforms out there that sort of try to let the person organizing the syndicate vehicle tag on to registered investment advisor status, etc. What we tell people is it's kind of a facts and circumstance test. And I would say it really just depends on what the aim of the person putting together the group is trying to do. Are they trying to get compensated for doing these things, or are they just looking to consolidate friendly investors so that they have a meaningful line item on the cap table and have more leverage and then make things easier? And I would say it depends. Now, when companies are setting this up, the question might arise, well, if I have the board of my operating company set up the RV, maybe I could, as an officer, take a management fee, like a 2 and 20 structure. And I think the issue there is that there are going to be some clear conflicts of interest that surround that and become problematic. It's not very customary or typical that this is done. In fact, I can't think of any examples where I have seen people involved with the operating company do that. So those are some issues that one needs to think through before doing it. But the answer is, like any fund or pooled investment vehicle, a manager could take some kind of fee, whether it be a management fee or a carried interest type of profits interest, but the regulations need to be analyzed and the situation needs to be looked at. And there may be a higher standard and more cost. Like a lot of fund managers do get their funds audited, or they have very clean financial records and books. They might have financial controls in place. The states in which you're operating may require such things. So it's very important that you kind of go through the analysis and look at it before you decide whether or not it's worth the time and expense to do so. A lot of SPVs that do charge those kinds of fees already have infrastructure in place to deal with it, so creating a new SPV isn't as much of a stretch as it is for an individual.